The twin moons of Virilan 9 hung low over a world made of silence. The wind screamed through broken hulls, scattering shards of alien alloy across the snowfields. A human silhouette lay still among the ruins, barely more than a shadow against the pale frost. Sergeant Elias Kane pressed his cheek to the rifle stock, watching through the scope as pale figures moved across the horizon like ghosts. He'd been in position for 16 hours. The cold was an old enemy, one that never tired, but he had learned patience long before this war. His breath fogged against the cracked visor of his helmet, then vanished in the freezing air. "Outpost Echo," he whispered into the calm, voice low and steady. "Kane. Recon Point Alpha. Visual contact, enemy armor and air scouts. They're setting up a command platform. Looks like they're getting ready for something big." Only static answered. He adjusted the dial. Nothing. The signal had been degrading all morning. He exhaled slowly. "You're on your own again, soldier." Then came the laughter. At first, it was faint, metallic chuckles echoing through his headset. The channel opened on its own, hijacked by alien frequencies. A voice followed, deep and coarse, laced with mockery. "Behold, the Terran relics still cling to metal tubes and burning powder," said the alien general, Virkun, his words translated by the calm's failing processor. "No plasma. No neural sync. Only sticks that throw rocks. Pathetic." The broadcasts widened, carrying across every Terran frequency. Other alien voices joined in laughter, a chorus of scorn that rolled across the spectrum like thunder. Kane closed his eyes. The sound cut deeper than plasma burns. He'd heard that laughter before, on Titan Base, before it fell, when the Zarth had broadcast their victory live to every human station. They always mocked before they destroyed. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a single brass cartridge, its surface scratched and worn. The name Reyes was etched into the side in black marker. He rubbed it between his fingers like a talisman. "Guess they didn't get the joke last time either, huh?" he muttered. Through the scope, he watched alien soldiers assemble around the floating dais. The platform hovered above the ice, its hull glowing with pale green light. Virkun stood at the center, tall, scaled, armored in crystalline plates that shimmered with reflected moonlight. Around him, sub-commanders recorded the transmission, broadcasting his arrogance across half the sector. "We will crush these primates," Virkun declared. "And when we finish, their worlds will burn as fuel for our ships. Let the galaxy see how quickly soft flesh breaks." Kane lowered the scope and sighed. "You should have stopped at laughing." He checked his rifle, the Barrett M82A3, an ancient Terran design long obsolete by galactic standards. It had no smart targeting, no plasma coolant, no auto-stabilization. Just a long barrel, a heavy bolt, and the will to pull the trigger. Humanity's simplest machine, and its deadliest. He touched the barrel, feeling the chill. "Still breathing, old girl?" The rifle didn't answer, but in the silence, it didn't have to. A faint signal cracked through his calm. Lieutenant Marquez's voice was nearly drowned by static. "Kane! Outpost, perimeter breached, heavy losses, if you've got eyes, we need." The line died. Kane clenched his jaw. Outpost Echo was 20 clicks east, 30,000 soldiers, engineers, medics. If that fell, the Terran front collapsed with it. He glanced back toward the alien dais. Virkun's platform overlooked the entire valley, coordinating every movement of the Zarth assault. Cut that command, and the aliens would lose cohesion. The odds were impossible. The range was nearly 2 kilometers. The atmosphere was thin, wind unpredictable, temperature below freezing. Even gravity here wasn't constant. The planet's core pulsed with magnetic shifts that warped trajectories. Any sane sniper would walk away. Kane wasn't sane. He was Terran. He scanned the ridge line, marking paths and windbreaks. The snow was dense enough to muffle steps, but drones patrolled the skies in wide circles. One wrong move, one shimmer of heat, and he'd be vaporized before the rifle even cycled. He whispered to himself. "Patience kills faster than bullets." Crawling through the frost, he moved from ruin to ruin, always in shadow, always beneath the wind. Every motion was calculated: 5 seconds still, 3 seconds crawl, pause, breathe, repeat. His heartbeat slowed until it matched the rhythm of the gusts. Hours passed before he reached a half-buried tower overlooking the alien command site. From this angle, he had a line of sight to Virkun. The alien general's crystalline armor gleamed under a faint aurora. Kane lifted his scope, adjusting manually for distance. The wind howled. The reticle drifted. He took out a small notepad, paper, not digital, and scribbled: wind speed 35 knots, drift east, temp -29, elevation -7 degrees. He flipped to the last page and saw a line scrawled by Reyes months ago: trust your gut, not your sensors. A smile touched his lips. Still teaching me, partner. Through the scope, a flicker of light caught his attention: hollow drones recording Virkun's speech. The aliens were performing, turning genocide into entertainment. He could see their teeth gleam as they laughed, breath steaming in the cold air. Humans, Virkun said, his voice booming through amplifiers, believe courage can replace evolution. Today, we remind them that bravery dies faster than bone. Kane whispered. Let's see if your bones agree. He slid the magazine into the rifle, chambered around, and settled the stock against his shoulder. The weapon groaned as metal shifted in the cold. His gloved finger brushed the trigger guard, not ready yet, never rushed the shot. The scope flickered as his visor's battery died. Vision dimmed, HUD vanishing into black. Only his eyes remained. That suited him fine. He exhaled, counting seconds between heartbeats. The storm quieted for an instant. Virkun turned his head slightly, scales catching light. Kane whispered, "Got you." Then a piercing alarm screamed across the sky. Drone patrols redirected toward his ridge. He froze. Their scanners must have caught a faint signature: too close, too soon. He disassembled the bipod, rolled sideways down the incline, and vanished behind a collapsed alien walker as plasma fire scorched the ground above. He crouched, checked his gear. 2 rounds left in the mag, 1 in reserve. He could retreat, but the laughter returned, broadcast louder, the aliens celebrating his near capture. They were mocking him again, certain he'd run. The Terranate flees, Virkun's voice boomed. Their kind cannot even aim without shaking. Kane closed his eyes and let the words sink in. Then he smiled, slow and sharp. You shouldn't have said that. He crawled deeper into the blizzard, letting snow mask his trail. The sound of alien laughter faded behind him. Somewhere ahead, a clear shot waited, and beyond that, silence, the kind earned only by one perfect trigger pull. He touched the cartridge engraved with Reyes once more, slid it into his pocket, and began the long crawl toward the light of the enemy platform. Let's give them something to remember, he murmured. As the wind rose again, carrying the echoes of mockery through the frozen night, the last human sniper of Virulon 9 disappeared into the storm, an invisible promise that the next sound the aliens heard would not be laughter, but thunder. Snow whispered around him, soft and deceptive. Beneath that quiet was a world ready to kill. Sergeant Elias Kane moved through it like smoke, low and slow, every muscle under control. The ridge ahead glimmered faintly with alien metal, fragments from a destroyed drone convo. He'd put one of those down earlier with a single round, but the aliens had learned quickly. Now they hunted too. He crouched beside a fallen support beam and unpacked his kit. The Barrett M82A3 lay across his lap, its black finish dulled by frost. The scope lens had cracked, but the mechanism still held 0. He dismantled the rifle, wiped the bolt, and oiled the spring with what was left of his rations. Each movement was careful, precise. The weapon wasn't just steel, it was the last conversation between him and a galaxy that had already dismissed his kind. He spoke under his breath. You and me, old girl. No second chances. The wind answered with a long, cold sigh. He loaded 2 magazines and slung the rifle. Through the ice-crusted slit of his helmet, he scanned the valley. Alien sensor drones blinked like fireflies, drifting in slow spirals. He waited for one to pass, then moved. Crawling over a field of shattered ice, he found higher ground, a slope where broken alien silos formed natural cover. From there, he could see the enemy's command dais again, floating above the blizzard like a dark moon. Virkun's forces swarmed beneath it, lines of reptilian soldiers, their armor pulsing with faint light. The platform's green glow painted the snow in sickly color. Kane adjusted his scope manually. The wind tugged his breath sideways. He timed the gusts, marked distances, then exhaled through clenched teeth. A patrol drone slid across the ridge. He waited for its arc to steady, then squeezed the trigger. The shot cracked the silence, echoing like a thunderclap. The round punched through the drone's core, shredding circuits in a spray of sparks. The machine spun, crashed, and detonated in a violet flash. The valley erupted with alarms. Alien radio chatter hissed through his comms, sharp, panic tones. They couldn't triangulate him. Their tracking systems weren't built for ballistic weapons. They relied on light, heat, and plasma trails. A subsonic slug that traveled faster than sound didn't leave those. Kane smirked. Outdated, huh? He moved immediately. The snow where he'd lain vaporized under plasma fire seconds later. The aliens fired blindly into the ridge, sweeping beams across the ice. Kane slid into a fissure, landing hard against frozen rock. The impact jarred his wounded shoulder, reopening the cut from earlier. He hissed but kept moving. Inside the fissure, the light dimmed. Ice walls glowed faintly with trapped minerals, and the air smelled of ozone. He pressed deeper until he reached a narrow cave. There, he paused, wrapping gauze around his shoulder with trembling hands. The radio crackled faintly. A voice, broken, distant. Kane, you still breathing? Marquez. Weak, but alive. He answered softly. Still here, Lieutenant. You holding echo? Barely. They hit us with everything. If you've got a miracle, now's the time. Kane looked at the .50 BMG cartridge in his hand. The name Reyes caught the faint glow of his visor. Working on it. He turned off the calm words wouldn't help now. Crawling through the cave, he emerged on the far side of the ridge. From here, the alien dais loomed directly ahead. He could see Virkun himself, towering, arms clasped behind his back, observing the battle through holographic lenses. Around him, the lesser generals gestured frantically, trying to identify the primitive projectile threat. Kane set the bipod into the snow, adjusted his sights. Distance, 2.1 kilometers. Gravity drop unknown. Wind, fierce and erratic. He scribbled quick notes on his pad, old calculations from a century-old sniper manual drilled into instinct. The storm thickened. Visibility flickered between clear air and a white curtain. He knew he'd get one chance, maybe two. A sudden beep pierced his headset. The alien comm channel flared open, an encrypted signal piggybacked onto Terran frequencies. Virkun's voice came through, slow and cold. Terran. I see you now. You think yourself invisible? Your kind always does. Kane froze. The alien had guessed, not located. Still, his pulse quickened. Do you believe your little metal sticks frighten us? We've conquered civilizations who built suns in their palms. Kane's reply was calm, measured. And yet, here you are, yelling into a snowstorm because one of those sticks keeps killing your machines. Defiance is noise before extinction. Funny, Kane said, adjusting his sights. I was going to say the same thing. The channel cut. Silence again, save the wind and his heart. He breathed once, twice. His shoulder throbbed, vision dimmed, but the world narrowed to the crosshair on his scope. He could see Virkun turning, profile visible through the green shimmer of the dais. He hesitated, not yet. The wind was wrong. Shooting now would waste the round. Lightning flashed, followed by thunder that rolled across the valley. Snow flared white, revealing the alien ranks below. Thousands. He exhaled slowly. Every instinct screamed to fire, but he waited. A drone passed overhead, its scanner beams slicing the air. He went still, heartbeats slowing to nothing. The beam moved on. He reached for his final round, the engraved cartridge, and loaded it with ritual care. The sound of the bolts sliding home was quiet, final. He kissed the brass casing through his glove. For you, brother. The wind calmed, almost unnaturally. The storm broke for the first time in days, revealing clear sky. The twin moons hung like silver eyes above the battlefield. The moment had come. Kane tightened his grip, finger resting on the trigger. Through the scope, Virkun stepped forward to address his officers. The alien's voice carried faintly through the thin air. They are finished. Humanity dies here. Kane smiled. Not today! Then the ground beneath him trembled. Plasma artillery fired from orbit, slamming into the valley below. Shockwaves rippled through the ice. His rifle jumped off target. Snow cascaded down the slope. He cursed, slammed the stock back into position. The shot was gone, the window closed. He rolled, grabbed the rifle, and sprinted sideways as plasma bolts tore through his hiding place. One blast melted a crater where he'd been seconds before. Panting, he slid behind a fallen turret. His visor displayed nothing but static, systems fried by the EM bursts. He was blind, deaf, and hunted. But the rifle still worked. He opened a new comm channel manually, whispering to no one. Marquez, if I don't make it, tell them we weren't the joke. He slung the rifle and started climbing. The new vantage point was higher, closer to the atmosphere's edge where the storm thinned. Ice cracked beneath his boots. Blood dripped onto the snow, dark and slow. Finally, he reached the summit of a shattered observation tower. Below him, the alien platform hovered, glowing like a green wound against the horizon. Virkun's form was still visible, larger than life. Kane steadied his weapon, body trembling. One last shot. He checked the wind again. It had died completely. The silence felt sacred. Through the cracked scope, he saw the alien's head tilt back, the faintest smirk crossing its scaled face as it looked toward the stars. Kane whispered, "Smile while you can." He closed one eye, aligned the crosshair, and squeezed halfway. The rifle hummed faintly, eager. A single breath. One heartbeat. Then darkness. The storm began to part. The next moment would decide the fate of every soldier still breathing on Virilon 9. He pressed the trigger all the way down. The world exhaled when he pulled the trigger. The rifle bucked into his shoulder, a deep metallic growl swallowed by the storm. A column of snow burst around him, and then, silence. No echo, no thunder. Only the faint shimmer of the .50 BMG round carving through the frozen air at supersonic speed. Through the cracked scope, Kane tracked it for a heartbeat, a glint of brass and fury slicing through the blizzard. The bullet struck the alien command dais with the force of a meteor. For an instant, nothing happened. Then Virkun's chest erupted in shards of crystal and vapor. The general staggered, disbelief painted across his scaled face. His armor, once proud and luminous, cracked like glass under a hammer. Alien officers turned, stunned into stillness. The broadcast feed caught every frame, the mighty conqueror struck down by a single primitive shot. The sound reached Kane seconds later, a distant, hollow tum that rolled across the valley like thunder arriving late to its own storm. He didn't smile. He simply watched through the scope as the giant fell. "Target down," he whispered. The radio exploded with static, then voices. "Echo to all units. Command links broken. They're panicking. Push forward." Kane lowered his rifle, chest heaving. He hadn't realized he'd been holding his breath. He blinked sweat and snow from his eyes. Below, the alien formation dissolved into chaos, lines breaking, officers shouting in confusion. The once disciplined army scattered like frightened insects. He slumped behind cover, shoulders sagging under exhaustion. Every nerve trembled from recoil and cold. He reached into his coat and pulled out the spent casing that had ejected onto the snow. Steam rose from it in the freezing air. He stared at it for a long time before tucking it beside the Reyes cartridge slot in his vest, two halves of a single promise kept. The storm thickened again, swallowing the horizon. He could hear distant explosions as Terran artillery found its rhythm, hammering the disoriented enemy. The human army, outnumbered, outgunned, was finally advancing. He allowed himself a short breath of relief before the calm crackled with a low, guttural voice. Terran. The tone made his spine tighten. Virkun. He raised the receiver. You're supposed to be dead. A weak laugh answered. A miscalculation. But not fatal. Yet. Kane adjusted his position, peering through the scope again. Virkun was still alive barely. The alien general knelt amid wreckage, clutching a shattered chest plate. Thick, iridescent blood steamed on the ice. His soldiers hovered near, terrified to approach. You are an animal, Virkun rasped. Blind luck wearing flesh. Kane's tone was calm. Luck doesn't aim 2 kilometers through a storm. You fight with toys. We command galaxies. What are you without your rifle? Kane paused. Human. The alien sneered through pain. That word will vanish soon enough. Maybe, Kane said, chambering another round. But not today. He centered the scope over the alien's skull. Virkun tried to rise, trembling, fury boiling behind his eyes. You can't kill an empire with a bullet. He spat. Kane's finger tightened. Watch me. The second shot cracked across the frozen plain. It was quieter than the first, intimate, almost merciful. The bullet struck just beneath the alien's jaw. The body slumped forward, motionless. The reign of Virkun ended in silence, not ceremony. Kane sat back, staring through the dissipating haze. He waited for the emotion to hit, triumph, vengeance, anything, but what came instead was a dull ache behind his eyes. He whispered, That's for Reyes. Snow began to fall again, slow and heavy. He reloaded out of habit, though no enemies were near. The fight below was ending fast, alien units abandoning their weapons, fleeing into the tundra. Terran dropships descended like steel hawks, their engines roaring triumphantly. His radio chimed. Kane, this is Echo Command. We saw the broadcast. Holy hell, that was you. You dropped their general on live hollow across 3 systems. Copy, Kane said quietly. Confirm, Virkun neutralized. Neutralized? You vaporized their morale. They're done. Extraction incoming. He didn't answer right away. His eyes stayed fixed on the distant wreckage. The floating dais was collapsing, its support systems whining as plasma cores bled out. Alien bodies glittered under moonlight like glass figurines shattered across snow. Kane? Say again? He clicked his comm. Negative on extraction. Too hot here. You'll just make targets. We can't leave you out there, Sergeant. You can't, he said, tone final. Just make sure this wasn't for nothing. Before the operator could reply, he shut the channel off. He pushed himself to his feet, every joint protesting. His shoulder bled freely now, soaking through the bandage. The climb back down the ridge felt endless. By the time he reached level ground, his body was running on instinct. The rifle's weight dragged against his arm. He stopped beside a broken banner pole jutting from the snow. Its surface was scorched black, once bearing the insignia of the Dominion. He stared at it a long while, then began digging into the ice with his combat knife. When the hole was deep enough, he laid the Barrett inside. The weapon looked almost peaceful resting there. A relic ready to sleep. He spoke softly, as if to a friend. You've done enough. Covering it with snow, he stood and looked east, where outpost Echo's fires burned faintly through the storm. For a brief moment, he imagined Reyes walking beside him again, laughing at the madness of it all. Guess they heard us after all, he said. The wind rose, carrying faint cheers from the distant battlefield. Victory. But Kane didn't turn back. He walked toward the edge of the frozen cliffs, where the aurora shimmered above the dark valley. He took off his helmet. The cold bit his skin, but he welcomed it. After so many months of noise, the silence was pure. He sat, letting his breath cloud in front of him. Somewhere behind, ships were landing, soldiers shouting, medics calling names. None reached him. He stared at the sky until his vision blurred. The comm clicked again, Marquez's voice, faint and distant. "Kane, we did it! You crazy bastard, we actually did it!" He smiled faintly. "Told you patience wins wars. Command wants you back at base." He turned the receiver off and set it beside him. The wind took it, burying it halfway in snow. Above him, the twin moons brightened, casting a silver glow over the field of broken machines. The snow sparkled, hiding the scars of battle beneath a clean white shroud. Kane whispered, "Rest easy, brother." His eyes drifted shut for a moment, the exhaustion finally catching up. When he opened them again, the sky was clear. Stars glimmered like bullet holes punched through the fabric of heaven. He rose unsteadily, took one last look at the valley of his victory, and began walking toward the horizon. Every step left a deep print that quickly filled with snow. Behind him, the alien broadcast stations, still active, still transmitting, continued to play the footage across countless worlds, a single human standing against a galactic army, the shot that shattered an empire, and the silence that followed. Weeks later, across hundreds of systems, murals would appear. Soldiers, alien and human alike, would paint a single phrase on walls, ships, and armor. They laughed, until the bullets spoke. And somewhere beneath the ice of Virilon 9, buried in eternal frost, the rifle of Sergeant Elias Kane slept, its barrel pointed skyward, waiting for the next hand foolish enough to doubt what humanity could do when cornered.